Ladies and gentlemen, good morning. Thank you so much for joining us. It's fantastic to be here. I direct the Institute for Futures Research, as you've heard. We were established in 1974 at Stellenbosch University by the then Rupert International to look at where business might be going, and that's why we have our esteemed panel. As you've heard, Barry Foster, Partner Director, People and Organization at PwC. Carl von Wocke, founder of Merlin and a leading expert on predictive analytics and artificial intelligence, and Martin Pienaar, the owner of MindWorks Consulting. Carl Wocke, you work in predictive analytics and artificial intelligence. Are the robots coming for our jobs?
I'm in artificial intelligence, but I have a particularly different perspective. We believe that the future of artificial intelligence is not necessarily in data mining, but actually mining human expertise. So I like to talk about humanizing technology versus dehumanizing technology. So particularly what I focus on is looking at how we can build artificial intelligence technologies so that we could have a particularly robust discussion around the importance of humans going forward. I do believe that you're going to have a scaling capability for human expertise. So what I mean by that is if you look at something like a cardiologist, you don't necessarily want to go and look at a textbook, you actually want to go and look at someone who's a subject matter expert in that space, and then using artificial intelligence technologies and techniques to scale that expertise and make that available. I often get asked by customers, are you going to put us out of a job? And my response is, in fact, we're going to make you more and more important in an organization. So what I said earlier was talking about humanizing technology, so using technology to humanize versus dehumanizing. Now, traditional machine learning, data analytics, you know, the stuff where you just point machine algorithms at historical data is dehumanizing. We need to point this technology at people and learn to be like people. Now, the problem with that is that we've cloned a cardiologist, and this cardiologist, I had a great beer discussion with him. I call it my red wine beer discussions. I said to him, can I suggest that you are 95% accurate, you're going to kill 5% of the people you see? He said this could be the case. So the problem with artificial intelligence is a virtual version of this individual is going to kill 5 people. To your earlier point, what do you do with that? So that's why you want to ideally position this technology at a second tier where you can embed the uniqueness of an organization. It really saddens me to see organizations where they dehumanize. So they become obsessed with scaling, with doing things faster and optimizing, cutting away. Before they wipe their eyes, they have no personality left. In the artificial intelligence space as well, there's definitely a wonderful relationship to be had between the expert and the technology. So the definition, the philosophical definition of an expert is something that you know and can do that I can't do. If you look at traditional data mining, you'll find that if I'm able to replicate an expert within data, that means you're no longer an expert. So a wonderful relationship is where you scale your expertise and make that available to the organization. So we do business with one of the biggest utility companies, and when we were asked to talk about the challenges going forward, I spent some time with them and certainly recognized that it's a wonderfully intelligent organization, and the challenge was to give scale to the expertise, so to make your top engineers available, your top skills available. So it was availability of skills that was a challenge and not necessarily doing things differently. So I'm a firm believer, if you were to say to me computational capability versus the human, I'm out and out a human supporter. So we don't want to confuse computational capability with what it takes to be a human expert. So, you know, one of a last example that I'd like to give is we've built a series of virtual doctors. And one of the decisions that we've built or cloned is a thing called end of life. So when is it time to consider to say goodbye to great-great-grandpa who's 120 years old? And at that point, you can refer to what your data extracts have told you, what the textbooks have told you, but wouldn't it be great to ask a professor who's top of his game, what do you think would be an approach? And that's a really good example of choosing human expertise and making that available versus traditional approaches where you say, people get out of the way and let's look at what we've learned historically.
Organizations have been working a lot on this idea of developing people, teaching them, and so on. But Carl Wocke, it turns out machines can learn as well. So the HR training department now takes on a new character by 2025. Is that right?
Yeah, so again, I'm not a human capital specialist at all. But from the experience I've had, there are two objectives, and they are distinct. And the first objective is to do things better. That's one objective, and 99% of what we do should be focused on that. But what if there's another objective, to do it the way Bob would do it? So in your organization, if you've got someone who just gets it right, we don't know why, they're an expert, what if you were to clone that expertise and make that available? So what we've done is we've positioned artificial intelligence at a second tier. So an example of a second tier would be a medical aid that we're working with, where based on actuarial tables, they would tell you that you cannot be a member because you're over 50 years of age. So a second tier expert would be called on to look at this profile of this potential client or member of the medical aid. It would be that person that you would phone to put your case to. So an example of that is a broker is trying to sell a product. The broker looks on their system and says, well, you fail. They very often will phone the medical aid and say, well, come on, this person has got 100 people working for them. They're very influential. Come on, let's do a deal. The person that they speak to on the other side will say, you know what, you make a good case, let's do it. So the ability to clone and scale that expertise that says, perhaps that's actually not a bad deal, that's where the future of AI is, certainly from my perspective. Our business in particular is investing in technologies that you basically are able to create a virtual version of yourself, and the panel of decisions or the library of decisions that make you unique and make your contribution to the organization valid. We're building technologies where you can go and engage with the virtual self, have a discussion, and at the end of that discussion, the technology or the AI technology will start to unpack your bias. So there's a wonderful relationship between subjectivity and bias and the like, and we believe the future is really in creating a framework where you can create that shadow self and impart your knowledge and wisdom into a virtual version of yourself that you can then deploy into an organization to do 1,000 transactions a second.
So talking to myself finally becomes normal.
Certainly in my world, you could get a job. What is quite interesting in sort of the machine learning, artificial intelligence space is the creation of IP. So certainly out in North America, where we are building risk robots and the like, these guys, the companies are actually putting these virtual robots on the balance sheet, which is quite fascinating to me. A perverse use of machine learning that I've seen, and I don't know whether I need to embrace it or not, is a corporation in the States who is in the process of cloning their best thinkers, and they're also cloning their worst thinkers, and they're looking at the difference between them, which is, technically possible, but you don't really know whether you want to be associated with that kind of drive.
Does attitude matter in artificial intelligence?
Sorry. Absolutely love attitude. It's a bias. We embrace it. If you look at an organization, so you guys are from organizations here, and if you're able to identify what makes your organization special, it's attitude of your top workers, your thinkers. What I'm suggesting is to bottle that attitude. So if you look at someone like an Amazon, they are obsessed about the customer to the point where Jeff Bezos fine-tunes his business not to make money and literally to give everything back to the organization. So if you look at let's take a Nando's as an example. If there's something something that makes them special, what I'm suggesting is to use artificial intelligence to bottle that something special and then propagate it into the organization. I think that we don't have an intelligence problem. We have a scalability problem. So to the earlier approach where you say, well, do we have, in a teaching environment, imagine if we could model the top 50 decisions that teachers make and make them available to teachers. So when should you discipline? When are you identifying someone who's got home life issues? When isn't that an approach? Because we know how to do it. Why don't we enable that? So again, it talks to humanizing technology. I'm absolutely obsessed with us not losing the plot where we focus on optimization, better resource utilization, more aggregation, fit the mold stuff, through to finding who are our top innovators, who are our top thinkers, and creating access to them, versus retraining people to think like everyone else does.
What I'm going to do is invite my panel to give us some closing thoughts on where is all this going and what should we do now?
My view, I'm extremely excited about the future. I think technology, if it's positioned correctly, will allow you to commoditize and productize your uniqueness, your skills. So you go through an exposure to training and all the things that excite you, get to a point where you can productize, commoditize you, and then make that available to your organizations and the like. So you might not be sitting at desks anymore, but you might be creating virtual versions of yourselves that'll add value to the organization and generate the benefit accordingly.